At his father's funeral, amid a sea of black suits and white chrysanthemums, the heir felt a hand on his arm. A woman in a black veil leaned close, her whisper slicing through the ritual. "Your uncle paid for the car," she said. Then she was gone, leaving him staggering before 500 mourners. The man trying not to collapse was Park Min-jun. His father, Park D-sung, wasn't just a businessman. He was the king of Seoul's underworld, and his car crash 3 days ago was no accident. The woman who vanished into the crowd was the only person who knew it, and the uncle she named, Kang Seok, was now holding Min-jun's arm, steadying him, asking what was wrong. Min-jun smiled through clenched teeth and said it was the incense. For the next 2 hours he played his part, the grieving son, the respectful heir, while his mind raced. Because the woman was right. His father's black Mercedes had been serviced just last week by his uncle's mechanic. The Park Empire wasn't built on bloodlines but on control. Park D-sung had ruled Seoul's night for 30 years through 2 simple principles: never trust family with money, and never let sentiment cloud a business decision. He'd started with 3 nightclubs in Itaewon in the 90s, back when American GIs had pockets full of cash and very few questions. By 2000, he controlled the liquor distribution for half the Gangnam district. By 2010, he'd moved into legitimate real estate, construction, and even a chain of boutique hotels. The underground operations, the protection rings, the underground casinos, the high-stakes smuggling, became the foundation, invisible but essential, like the pilings beneath a skyscraper. His right hand for 20 of those years was Kang Seok, not by blood but by bond forged in the early days when D-sung took a knife meant for Seok's throat. In return, Seok had taken a bullet meant for D-sung's heart. The scar was a ragged sunburst over his left collarbone, a badge he wore with pride. D-sung made him a partner, gave him a new name, a new life, made him the family's Imja the fixer, the one who made problems disappear without a trace. And when D-sung's wife died young, leaving a 7-year-old Min-jun, it was Uncle Seok who taught the boy how to throw a punch, how to read a balance sheet, and crucially, how to never show weakness in front of the men. The funeral was a masterpiece of Seok's orchestration. 500 guests, the police commissioner in the 3rd row, a city councilor giving a eulogy. The white chrysanthemums, a symbol of lament, were also Seok's idea. "We show them respect so they don't look too closely at the books," he told Min-jun the night before. Now, watching Seok greet mourners with solemn grace, Min-jun felt the whisper like a live wire in his chest. The crash had been clean, too clean. A rainy Tuesday night on the Bukkak Skyway, D-sung's car had swerved, smashed through the guardrail, and plunged 40 meters into the Han River. The official report cited hydroplaning, defective tires, a tragic accident. The car was pulled from the water, a mangled shell. D-sung was still behind the wheel. His watch, a Patek Philippe worth more than a house, was gone. The police called it robbery by opportunists. Seok had been furious, vowed to find the scavengers who disrespected his brother. Now Min-jun wondered if the missing watch was just set dressing. Back at the Gangnam penthouse after the burial, the inner circle gathered. 10 men in the living room, the air thick with smoke and silent calculation. Seok poured whiskey into D-sung's favorite crystal tumbler and placed it on the mantel, a tradition for the departed. Then he turned to the room. "The king is dead," Seok said, his voice low and carrying. "But the kingdom remains. Min-jun is the blood heir, but he is young. The wolves at our borders are not. The Jialong triad from Busan has been sniffing around our docks for months. The Russians want a bigger cut of the northern roots. We must show one face, a strong face. Until the transition is secure, I will hold the reins, as his father would have wanted." There were nods, murmurs of agreement. Min-jun stood by the window, his back to them, watching the city lights. He was 32. He'd run the legitimate hotel chain for 5 years, turning it profitable. But in this room, he was still the boy. The ritual was complete. The transfer of power seamless. The whisper in the funeral hall screamed in his head. That night, Min-jun couldn't sleep. He went to his father's study, a room frozen in time. The ledger was gone, of course. Seok would have it, but his father was a man of hidden duplicates. Minjun ran his fingers along the spines of leather-bound books, Shakespeare, Sun Tzu, Korean poetry. He remembered a lesson from when he was 15. The truth is never in the safe, son. It's in the thing nobody thinks to read. His father had tapped a bulky anthology of 19th century French poetry. Minjun pulled it now. The pages were hollowed out. Inside, a small black notebook. It wasn't the main ledger. It was a private log, dates, initials, amounts, and notes in his father's tight script. The last entry was dated 4 days before the crash. S becoming a problem, greedy, talks to the Russians behind my back. The mechanic thing confirmed. Must deal with him before the quarter ends. The initial S, Kang Seok, the mechanic thing. Minjun's phone buzzed. A blocked number, a text message. The mechanic's name is Choi. He works at Auto Palace Garage in Mapo. He has a daughter in university. Ask him about the brake line inspection on the Mercedes model S580 VIN ending in 703. He will be afraid. Tell him you know about the photos. Then a second message, an attachment. A grainy photo of Uncle Seok taken from a distance handing an envelope to a man in garage coveralls. The timestamp, the day after the crash. The door to the study opened. Minjun slammed the book shut, slipping the notebook into his jacket pocket. Uncle Seok stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of whiskey. Couldn't sleep either, Seok said, his voice gentle. He held out a glass. Thinking about your father. Thinking about the business, Minjun said, taking the glass. His hand was steady. Seok nodded, looking around the study. He loved this room, taught you everything in here. He took a slow sip. You know, in the old days when a lion king died, the young males would fight to the death for the pride. The strongest would win and the pride would survive. Sentiment was a luxury they couldn't afford. He looked directly at Minjun. We are not so different. The city is our pride, and I have fought for it my whole life. Is that a warning, uncle? Minjun asked, the whiskey burning his throat. Seok's eyes softened, but it didn't reach the rest of his face. It's a lesson. From one king to another, get some rest. Tomorrow we meet the Russians. You'll need your strength. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Minjun, be careful where you put your trust. This city is full of pretty whispers. The door clicked shut. Minjun stood alone in the dark study, the photo burning in his phone, the notebook heavy in his pocket. The game had begun, and his first move would be at dawn, in a garage in Mapo, with a mechanic named Choi who had a daughter to protect. Choi the mechanic was a small man made smaller by fear. When Minjun found him at the Auto Palace garage just after 6 a.m., Choi dropped his wrench. The metallic clang echoed in the empty service bay. I don't know anything, he blurted, his eyes darting to a photo taped to his toolbox, a young woman in a university graduation gown. Minjun didn't raise his voice. He leaned against a workbench, the early morning light slicing through dusty windows. The Mercedes S580, VIN ending 703. You did the brake service 4 days before it went into the river. What did you find? Choi's hand shook. I just did the service, flushed the lines. Everything was standard. My father is dead, Minjun said, his voice flat. The police report says hydroplaning, but a woman at his funeral told me to ask you about the brake line inspection. Not the service, the inspection. And she sent me a photo of you taking an envelope from Kang Seok the day after the crash. The color drained from Choi's face. He looked at his daughter's photo, then back at Minjun, a silent calculation of debts. He said it was a bonus, for discretion. He said your father was paranoid, seeing problems where there weren't any. What did you find, Choi? The mechanic sank onto a rolling stool. The rear brake line, it wasn't worn. It was asterisk scored asterisk, deliberately. A fine, deep groove about 70% through the high-pressure line. It wouldn't fail in the shop, but under heavy, repeated braking, like on a downhill skyway in the rain, the pressure would burst it. No brakes, just steering. Did you fix it? Choi's silence was the answer. He told me to note it as inspected within tolerance. He said your father was old. His reflexes were slow, that he was a danger on the road. He said he was protecting the business, protecting you from a messy succession. Min-jun felt the world tilt. The technical detail was too precise to be a lie. You have proof, the work order. Gone, Choi whispered. He took the original, my copy. I burned it. But you photographed it first, Min-jun said, the realization dawning. A man like you, with a daughter in Yuha University, doesn't take that kind of risk without insurance. Choi stared at him, defeated. He walked to a locked cabinet, fumbled with a key, and pulled out a cheap prepaid phone. He handed it to Min-jun. On it, a single photo. The work order, clear handwriting, rear brake line, scoring noted at 70% depth. Customer advised immediate replacement. And below, a sticky note in the photo's corner in Seok's distinctive angular script, disregard, mark with inspect. Min-jun forwarded the photo to himself, then deleted the send record. If anything happens to me, or to you, this goes to a reporter at the Korea Herald whose contact is already saved in this phone. You understand? Choi nodded, tears in his eyes. My daughter. Your daughter is safe as long as you are silent. You saw me here for a tire rotation, that's all. Min-jun placed the phone back in his hand. Keep your insurance. The meeting with the Russians was at 10 a.m. in a private room at the Shilla Hotel. Seok was already there, laughing too loudly with a man named Igor, who had ice-blue eyes and knuckles like walnuts. Min-jun watched his uncle. The easy confidence, the hand on Igor's shoulder. The man who had just orchestrated a murder played the gracious host. The young Park, Igor boomed, his Korean heavily accented. Your father was a giant, a shame. Thank you, Min-jun said, taking a seat. He felt the weight of the black notebook in his inner pocket. The negotiation was about the northern smuggling route through Incheon port. The Russians wanted a 15% increase in their share, citing new security costs. Seok argued them down to 10 with a firm handshake. It was a good deal, but as they stood to leave, Igor paused. One more thing, the new product. The synthetic opioids from our lab in Vladivostok. We need distribution. Your father was hesitant, said it was too hot. What does the new blood say? Seok jumped in. We need to discuss that internally, Igor. The Korean market is. I'm asking the son, Igor said, his eyes fixed on Min-jun. Min-jun remembered another entry in the notebook. S pushing the Russian powder, says it's the future, it's poison, and it brings federal attention we cannot afford. His father's words. My father was right, Min-jun said, keeping his voice level. It's too hot. The National Police Agency is already forming a narcotics task force. We stick to the established routes. Electronics, luxury goods, not poison. Igor's smile didn't reach his eyes. He glanced at Seok, then back to Min-jun. Interesting. You have your father's caution, but caution in our business can look like weakness. He left without another word. In the car afterwards, Seok was silent for a full 5 minutes. Then he exploded. What was that? You undermine me in front of them. They will think we are divided. You were going to say yes, Min-jun stated. It's millions a month, Min-jun. Millions. Your father's old-fashioned morality doesn't pay the bills for 500 soldiers. My father's morality kept him alive for 30 years, Min-jun shot back, until someone killed him for it. The air in the car froze. Seok turned slowly to look at him. What did you say? I said someone killed him, and I'm going to find out who. Seok's expression softened into something like pity. Grief is making you see ghosts, nephew. The rain killed him. A tragic accident. You need to rest. Let me handle the business. That afternoon, Min-jun avoided the penthouse. He went to his father's oldest legitimate business, the Park Hotel in Myeongdong. In the manager's office, a man his father had trusted for decades, Mr. Kim, greeted him with bowed head and red eyes. I have a technical question, Mr. Kim, Min-jun said, closing the door. The hotel's security server, the off-site backup, who has access? Only me, your father, and the head of it. Why? My father ever asked you to archive anything? Video, audio, files not related to the hotel. Mr. Kim hesitated, then walked to a wall safe behind a painting. He dialed the combination, retrieved a small, unlabeled hard drive. He gave me this 6 months ago, said to keep it safe, that if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to you and only you. He called it his life insurance. Min-jun took the drive. It felt cold and heavy. Back in a secure, windowless IT room, he plugged it in. The drive contained one folder named S inside audio files, dozens of them, dated over the past 2 years. He clicked the most recent from 3 weeks ago. His father's voice weary. Siak, we're not doing the Russian opioids. It's a line. We cross it, we never come back. Siak's voice smooth, reasonable. Hyung, the world has changed. The old rules are for old men. This is the profit that secures our future, your son's future. You think I don't see what you're doing? The meetings with Igor without me, the skim from the construction contracts. You're building a war chest. A pause, then Siak's voice colder now. A man must look after his own interests. You taught me that. Loyalty has a price. You're no longer willing to pay it. Get out. Of course, Hyung, get some rest. You seem tense. The recording ended. Min-jun scrolled. Another from 2 months ago, an argument about the trust funds. Siak pushing for more liquidity, his father refusing. Then a different voice. A woman's voice speaking in careful, formal Korean. He didn't recognize it. The date was 5 days before the crash. Mr. Park, the information I provided is verified. The mechanic has been compromised. The meeting between Kang Siak and the Jialong liaison in Busan did happen. Your brother is not just stealing from you. He is making a deal to replace you. The car is not safe. His father's voice. Who are you? Why are you telling me this? Because he hurt someone I love, too. And because someone has to stop him before more people get crushed. What do you want? I want you to win, and then I want justice. The file ended. It was her, the woman from the funeral. His mysterious ally had been warning his father, and his father had listened, but not enough, not in time. Min-jun's phone vibrated. A new message from the blocked number. The drive is the key, but it's not the whole lock. Your uncle didn't work alone. Find the woman who disappeared 3 years ago, the dancer. Her name is Luna. Attached was a news clipping from a tabloid. Showgirl vanishes, foul play suspected. The photo showed a stunning woman with a bright smile, a performer at the Eclipse Club, one of his father's old holdings. She had disappeared without a trace. The article quoted a detective saying they suspected organized crime involvement. The case went cold. Why was this woman linked to Siak? Min-jun cross-referenced the date of her disappearance with his father's black notebook. There it was, a single entry. S cleaned up his mess at Eclipse. Cost 10 million won to make it go away. He's getting sloppy. A mess, a vanished dancer, 10 million won to the police or to someone else. He called Mr. Kim back to the IT room. The Eclipse Club, 3 years ago, a dancer vanished. Do you know anything? Mr. Kim paled. That is not something to discuss. I'm not asking for gossip. I'm asking for the truth. My father wrote about it. Mr. Kim sighed, deflating. It was a scandal, the girl Luna she was. Involved with a high-ranking man, she threatened to go public. She had evidence, they said. Then she was gone. Your father was furious. He had a rule, no violence against women, no messy personal entanglements. He believed Kang Siak had handled it. Handled meaning paid her off and sent her away. But when the police report called it a suspected abduction, your father had doubts. It caused a rift, a big one. Did my father investigate? He tried, but the trail was ice. The club manager was replaced. The staff were all new. The security footage from that night was erased from the main system. Your father's private investigator hit dead ends. Then 6 months later, the car accident happened. Your father was paralyzed with grief, and then he was just paralyzed. A horrific pattern snapped into focus. Siak's messes were cleaned with extreme prejudice. The dancer threatened his secret, likely his dealings with the Russians or the Jayalong, so she vanished. His father threatened to expose him, so his breaks failed. The method was different, but the signature was the same. Elegant, deniable, permanent. Minjun needed to find Luna or proof of what happened to her. It was the linchpin, but his phone buzzed again. This time not a blocked number, it was his uncle. "Come to the penthouse. Now we have a problem." The tone was different, urgent, not a command but a summons. When Minjun arrived, the living room was empty except for Siak and two men Minjun didn't recognize. They had the look of cops but not in uniform. Cold, assessing eyes. "Minjun, these are Inspectors Park and Lee from the Financial Intelligence Unit," Siak said, his face a mask of concern. "They have some questions about your hotel's books, specifically some irregular payments flagged by the bank." Inspector Park, the older of the two, gave a thin smile. "Just a routine inquiry, Mr. Park, but we do need you to come down to the station to clarify a few things. Voluntarily, of course." It was a chess move. Siak was using the state to remove him from the board, to discredit him, to tie him up in legal knots while he solidified power. To refuse would look guilty. To go would put him in their territory. Minjun looked at his uncle. Siak's eyes held a warning and a promise. This can be easy or this can be hard. "Of course, Inspector," Minjun said, his voice calm. "I'm happy to cooperate, but may I use the restroom first?" In the marble bathroom, he sent a single text to the blocked number. "They're taking me in. FIU. The dancer is named Luna. Find her." He then removed the SIM card from his phone, snapped it in half and flushed it. The phone itself, clean of anything incriminating, went back in his pocket. As he walked out to the waiting inspectors, he caught Siak's eye. There was no pity there now, just the cold, flat look of a hunter whose trap has sprung. The game had escalated, and Minjun was no longer just the investigator. He was now the target. The interrogation room at the Financial Intelligence Unit was a bland, soundproofed box. Inspector Park's routine questions were a surgical dismantling of Minjun's legitimacy. They had bank transfers, shell company records, all funneling through the hotel's accounts, transactions Minjun had never authorized. 800 million won, transferred over the past 6 months to a holding company registered in the British Virgin Islands, Park said, sliding a printed statement across the table. "The digital authorization has your employee ID and a verified passkey. How do you explain that?" "I can't," Minjun said, keeping his voice calm, "because I didn't do it. My system was compromised." "Convenient," Inspector Lee, the younger one, chimed in. "Your father dies, you inherit control, and suddenly the books are being cooked to funnel money offshore. It looks like you're preparing to run, or to finance a war against your uncle for control." So that was the narrative, not just embezzlement but fratricidal greed. Siak was framing him as unstable, criminal, unfit. Minjun knew arguing was pointless. They weren't there to listen. They were there to bury him in paperwork and hold him for the maximum 48 hours while Siak moved unchecked. He asked for a lawyer. They nodded, said one was on the way. 4 hours passed. No lawyer. The bland room, the humming fluorescent light, it was all designed to erode. Minjun thought of the hard drive, the notebook, the photo from the mechanic. All of it was in a secure locker at the Park Hotel. If Siak's men searched his penthouse and found nothing, they would look wider. He had to hope Mr. Kim was as loyal as he seemed. At the 6-hour mark, the door opened. But it wasn't a lawyer. It was a woman in a sharp pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She placed a folder in front of Inspector Park, whispered a few words, and left. Park's demeanor changed. The casual cruelty tightened into something official. "New development," Park said, opening the folder. "While you've been here, we executed a search warrant at your personal residence. We found something interesting hidden in the ceiling panel of your walk-in closet." Minjun's blood ran cold. He had nothing in his closet. A 9mm handgun, serial number filed off, and 2 kilos of a synthetic opioid matching the signature product of a known Vladivostok syndicate. Park looked up, his eyes hard. The same product you so virtuously rejected this morning, according to our sources, planning to cut out the middleman, Mr. Park. The setup was breathtaking, not just financial but narcotics and weapons. This wasn't about discrediting him anymore. This was about putting him in prison for 20 years. "I want my lawyer," now Minjun said, his composure cracking. "Your lawyer was in a car accident an hour ago. Minor, but he'll be at the hospital all night. How unfortunate." Park stood up. "You'll be transferred to a holding cell at Seoul Metropolitan. The narcotics charge changes things. This is no longer a financial inquiry." As they led him out in handcuffs, Minjun saw him, standing at the end of the corridor talking calmly to a senior officer, Kang Seok. Their eyes met. Seok gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a nod of triumph. It was a nod of farewell. The holding cell was a nightmare of noise and stench. Minjun sat on a concrete bench, the reality crashing down. Seok had every angle covered. The police, the evidence, the narrative. The mysterious woman's texts were his only tether to the outside, and he had no phone. He didn't know how much time had passed when a guard banged on the bars. "Park, visitor." It wasn't a lawyer. It was Mr. Kim, the hotel manager. He looked terrified, clutching a briefcase. The guard watched from a distance. "I came as soon as I heard," Mr. Kim whispered, his voice shaking. "They're tearing apart the hotel office. They have a warrant for the security server." "The hard drive?" Minjun asked urgently. "Gone. I moved it before they arrived, but that's not why I'm here." Mr. Kim's eyes were wide. "A woman came to the hotel. She knew your name. She knew you'd been arrested. She gave me this for you." He slid a plain envelope through the bars. Inside, a single keycard for a private storage facility in Dongdaemun and a slip of paper with a unit number. On the back, a handwritten note. "The lock opens with the date Luna disappeared. He kept her. Find her and you find the truth that breaks him." "Did she say who she was?" Minjun asked. "No name. African woman, dressed in black. She spoke perfect Korean. She said to tell you the maid sends her regards." Then she left. The maid, the phrase from the audio file. The maid is mistaken. It was a code. The woman from the funeral was calling herself the maid. But whose maid? "You have to get me out of here, Mr. Kim. They've planted drugs and a gun. If I go to trial, I'm finished." "I've called someone," Mr. Kim said, even quieter. "An old friend of your father's, not from the business, from the army. He has influence. He's making a call, but it will take time. You must get through the night." The guard started walking back. Mr. Kim stood quickly. "Be ready," he whispered, and was gone. The night was long. Minjun used the time to think. The date Luna disappeared. He committed it to memory from the tabloid clipping, March 15th, 3 years ago, 03152021, a potential passcode. Just before dawn, the cell door clanged open again. A different guard, stone-faced. "Release order. Paperwork screwed up. Charges held for further review. You're free to go." It wasn't freedom. It was a stay of execution. Seok's influence in the FIU was strong, but his father's old army friend had found a bigger lever, at least for now. Minjun walked out of the precinct into the gray morning light, a man marked. He knew he was being followed. He used a series of subway switches and crowded markets, classic tradecraft his father had taught him, and lost the tail. By mid-morning, he stood outside the secure store facility in Dongdaemun. He used the keycard at the gate. The unit was on the 3rd floor, climate-controlled. The door to Unit 315 hissed open. Inside, not boxes, but a small, neat office. A desk, a computer, a filing cabinet. And on the walls, photos, maps, and strings connecting them. A detective's war room. This was where the mysterious woman had been working. At the center of the web was a photo of Kang Seok. Radiating out, the Eclipse Club, the Russian Igor, the Jialong Triad symbol, a photo of the mechanic Choi, a schematic of a Mercedes brake line, and a death certificate for Park Di-sung. But one cluster was denser than all others. Photos of a beautiful woman, Luna, at the club, laughing, dancing. Then CCTV stills of her leaving with a man whose face was blurred. Then a map of the countryside west of Seoul, with a red circle around a town called Jipyeong. And finally, a grainy, long-lens photo of a woman in a garden, her face turned away, her posture subdued. The date stamp was 6 months old. Luna was alive. Min-jun sat at the computer. It was unlocked. On the desktop, a folder labeled for Min-jun. He opened it, a video file. The woman from the funeral appeared on screen. She was in a simple room, no veil. Her expression was serious, direct. If you're here, you're alive, and you're ready to listen. My name is Amara. Luna is my younger sister. 3 years ago, she was dancing at the Eclipse to pay for her nursing degree. She was naive. She fell for Kang Seok's charm. He promised her the world. Then she saw what he really was. She saw him meet with the Jialong to plan a coup against your father. She took photos with her phone. She told him she would expose him if he didn't leave the life. He didn't get angry. He told her he'd take her somewhere safe to talk. That was the last time I saw her. Amara took a steadying breath. The police did nothing. Your father's investigator hit walls. I realized if I wanted justice, I had to become a ghost. I used my sister's savings. I learned. I watched. I got a job as a housemaid for one of Seok's business associates. I listened. I planted bugs. I learned about the brake lines, about the Russian drugs, about the financial schemes. I went to your father. He believed me, but he moved too slowly. His sentiment for his brother was his weakness. And it got him killed. She leaned closer to the camera. The storage unit password is my sister's birthday. The evidence is in the cabinet. Seok didn't kill Luna. He couldn't. He's obsessed with her. He keeps her in a private villa in Jipyeong with guards and a doctor. She's not a prisoner in chains. She's a prisoner in silk. He visits her. He thinks she's broken, compliant. But 6 months ago, she managed to smuggle a letter out with a grocery delivery boy. She's still in there, and she still has the photos. The originals, on a micro SD card she hid. He's turned the world upside down looking for it, but she's smarter than he knows. Your uncle's weakness isn't greed or ambition, Amara said, her gaze piercing. It's my sister. He's in love with the ghost he created, and that villa is the seat of his power. All his secret records, his blackmail files, his deals, they're there in a safe room because it's the only place he feels secure. You want to break him. Don't attack his businesses. Rescue his ghost, and take everything he holds dear. The video ended. Min-jun sat in the silence, the story rearranging itself. This wasn't just a power grab. It was a twisted, tragic obsession that had sparked everything. Luna wasn't dead evidence. She was living, breathing leverage. He opened the filing cabinet. It contained dossiers, financial records, voice analysis reports on the audio files, blueprints of the Jipyeong villa, shift patterns for the guards, even the doctor's prescription schedule. Amara hadn't just been gathering information. She'd been planning a siege. His phone, a cheap burner bought on the way, buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The villa is having a delivery tomorrow at 4 p.m. a floral truck. The driver is ours. Be at the North Service Gate. Come alone or Luna dies. ***. Min-jun looked at the detailed map of the villa. It was a fortress, but every fortress had a flaw, and Amara, the ghost in the machine, had found it. The path was clear and impossibly dangerous. He wasn't just walking into his uncle's trap anymore. He was walking into his uncle's heart. The floral truck smelled of lilies and damp earth. Min-jun lay under a tarp in the back, feeling every bump on the road to Jipyeong. The driver, a grim-faced man named Yi, had said only 3 words to him: "Follow my lead. Don't hesitate." The villa was a modern fortress of glass and steel, nestled in a private valley. At the North Service Gate, a guard waved Yi through with a bored glance. The truck stopped at a loading dock behind the main house. As Yi unloaded trays of orchids, he nodded towards a servant's entrance. 5 minutes. The code is 703. His father's car model, a mocking signature. Minjun slipped inside, the blueprint from Amara's files overlaying perfectly in his mind. The corridor was silent, lined with expensive, empty art. He moved toward the east wing, where Luna's rooms were marked. The door was unlocked. The room inside was nothing like a prison. It was lavish. Silk cushions, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a koi pond, a grand piano. A woman sat at the window, her back to him. Long black hair, a simple white dress. She didn't turn. "He said you might come," she said, her voice soft, without inflection. "The righteous son coming to save the damsel." "Luna," Minjun said, staying by the door. She turned slowly. She was beautiful, but her eyes were flat like polished stones. "My name is Yuna. Luna was the girl who died 3 years ago. What's left is what he wanted. Amara sent me, your sister." A flicker, a crack in the stone, her breath hitched. "Amara is here. She's waiting. She never stopped looking. She said you have something, the photos." Luna stood, walking to a bookshelf. She removed a volume of Rilke poetry, its pages hollowed out. Inside, a tiny micro SD card. "He turned this place upside down for it. He never thought to look in the one thing he gave me to pretend I was still cultured." She handed it to Minjun. "It's all there, him with the Jayalong, the initial payment receipts, the plans. It was never about blackmail for me. It was about proof." "Come with me, now," Minjun urged. She shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "And go where? My face is on a missing poster. My life is gone, but you can use that." He has a study, down the hall behind the landscape painting. A retinal scanner, his safe room, everything is there. The break order, the financial trails, the police payoffs. He comes here every Tuesday to update it, to feel in control. "Today is Tuesday," Minjun said. The door to the suite opened. Kang Seok stood there, still in his funeral suit, holding a single white chrysanthemum. He didn't look surprised. He looked weary. "Nephew, I had a feeling you'd find your way here. You always were too clever for your own good." He stepped in, placing the flower on the piano. "Yuna, darling, would you give us a moment?" She looked at Minjun, then bowed her head and slipped out silently. The door clicked shut. "She's remarkable, isn't she?" Seok said, gazing after her. "A spirit I had to gentle, for her own protection, of course." "You killed my father," Minjun said, the words hanging in the perfumed air. "I saved the empire," Seok corrected, turning to face him. "Your father was a relic. He wanted to keep us in the past, playing small-time games while the world moved on. The Russians, the synthetics, the future. He was too scared to grab it. He would have watched it all crumble. I couldn't let that happen. To what we built." "You built nothing, you stole. You murdered, you kidnapped." "I preserved," Seok's calm cracked, his voice rising. "I preserved everything, the business, your inheritance, even her. I saved her from her own foolishness. She was going to ruin us all. Now she has peace, safety, luxury." "You call this peace?" Minjun gestured to the gilded room. "She's a ghost." "Better a living ghost than a dead witness," Seok said, his composure returning. He sighed. "I didn't want it to be like this with you, Minjun. I saw a son in you. I wanted to teach you, to guide you into the new world. But you have your father's sentimentality. It's a fatal flaw." He drew a small, elegant pistol from his jacket. "The police will find you here. An intruder shot while trying to harm my poor, traumatized ward. A tragic end to a troubled young man. The narrative writes itself." Minjun didn't move. "The mechanic's photo, the audio files, the micro SD card in my pocket. Amara has copies. If I die, it all goes public. Not to the police you own, to the international press, to Interpol. Your empire burns with me." Seok's finger tightened on the trigger, the silence stretched. Then a new voice. "He's not lying." Amara stood in the doorway to an adjoining room, a digital recorder in her hand. She must have come in through the garden entrance. Her gaze was fixed on Seok. Every word is being uploaded to a secure cloud right now. Shoot him and you're not just a murderer, you're a headline. Seok's eyes darted between them, the pistol wavering. For the first time, Min-jun saw genuine fear in his uncle's eyes. The fear of exposure, of losing the narrative. "It's over, uncle," Min-jun said quietly. "The villa is surrounded by my father's old army friends, not your men. The police waiting outside are from the National Intelligence Service, not your FIU puppets. You're not in control here." The door burst open. Men in tactical gear flooded in, weapons raised. Not Seok's guards. They secured Seok, disarming him without violence. Inspector Park was among them, but his demeanor was different, professional, detached. He nodded to Min-jun. "Mr. Park, we'll take it from here." As Seok was led out, he looked back once, not at Min-jun, but at the empty spot where Yuna had been sitting. His face wasn't angry. It was devastated. The fallout was public and brutal. The evidence, the mechanic's photo, the audio recordings, the financial records from the villa's safe, Luna's photos, was a tidal wave. Kang Seok was charged with murder, conspiracy to murder, kidnapping, fraud, and racketeering. The FIU inspectors were arrested for corruption. The Russian deal collapsed. Min-jun held a press conference, not at the penthouse but at the Park Hotel. He stood beside Amara and Yuna, who held her sister's hand tightly. He laid out the truth, simple and stark. He announced he was dissolving the illicit side of the Park empire, cooperating with authorities to untangle the legitimate businesses from the criminal ones. He spoke of his father not as a king, but as a man who lost his way and whose trust was fatally misplaced. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and corporate restructuring. Yuna, with Amara's fierce protection, entered a witness protection program. Her identity changed, her life her own again. The last time Min-jun saw them, they were at an airport gate bound for Canada. Yuna hugged him, a real, firm hug. "Thank you for seeing the girl, not the ghost," she whispered. Amara shook his hand. "Your father was a good man in the end," he listened. "That's more than most." Then she was gone. One evening, Mr. Kim brought a final box to Min-jun's new, smaller apartment. It was from his father's study. Inside, beneath some ledgers, was an old photograph. His father and Seok, years ago, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing in front of their first nightclub. On the back, in his father's writing, "My brother, my mistake." And beneath that, a newer note on a sticky note. "Min-jun, if you're reading this, I failed. Don't make my error. Trust must be earned, not given, not even to blood." Min-jun framed the photo. He kept it on his desk, not as a tribute to what was, but as a warning of what could be. The final surprise came in a formal letter from the National Police Agency. Due to his cooperation and the extraordinary circumstances, all charges against him were dropped. Furthermore, the courts had granted him full control of the legitimate Park holdings, free and clear of Seok's claims. Attached was a single, handwritten post-it from the senior investigator. "Your father's army friend sends his regards. He says you did what D-sung couldn't. You cleaned the house." Min-jun sold the penthouse. He moved the headquarters of Park Holdings to a modest building in Myeongdong. He kept the hotel. He kept the legitimate ventures. And every Tuesday he visited his father's grave, not with chrysanthemums but with simple wildflowers. He would tell him about the business, about the choices he was making. He never knew if it was heard, but it felt like a conversation that had been interrupted for too long. The empire was smaller now, but it was his, and it was clean. So what remains after the empire falls? Not the fortune, not the territory, but the story. And the story began with a whisper. A single sentence, passed from a stranger in a veil to a grieving son, proved heavier than 30 years of loyalty, more powerful than all the guns and money in Seoul. It was a seed of doubt that grew into a forest of truth, toppling a kingdom built on secrets. Park Min-jun learned the hardest lesson his father never taught him, that in a world of lies, the most dangerous weapon is a single, verifiable fact. The scored break line, the hidden audio file, the photograph in a book of poetry. These were the cracks that shattered the monolith. His uncle's fatal error wasn't greed or ambition. It was sentiment. He believed his own narrative, the loyal brother, the protective uncle, the careful custodian. He built a prison of silk for Luna and called it love, a cage of obligation for Min-jun and called it mentorship. In the end, he was imprisoned by the fiction he worked so hard to maintain. And what of the Whisperer? Amara vanished as completely as she appeared. No spotlight, no reward. Her justice was not in headlines, but in her sister's freedom, in a corrupt man in a cell, in a legacy cleansed of poison. She was the ghost who haunted the machine until the machine broke. Proof that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone has forgotten how to see. The Park Empire is now a legitimate enterprise. The dark foundations have been excavated and filled with concrete. Min-jun walks a narrower path, aware that every ally is a potential successor, every partnership a future betrayal. He keeps his father's photograph not as an idol, but as a compass, pointing forever toward the cost of misplaced trust. The mystery of that funeral whisper is solved, but it leaves a larger, more haunting question in its wake. How many other kingdoms are standing right now because one necessary person has chosen to stay silent? How many empires are just one brave whisper away from collapse? We live in a world of performed power, of curated narratives. This story is a reminder to listen for the whispers beneath the eulogies, to look for the truth in the hollowed-out book, and to remember that the strongest hands are not always the ones that fight, but the ones that finally, courageously, let go. If you found this journey into the shadows compelling, there are more stories where truth battles narrative. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Until then, look closer and listen.